Hi, this is Kris Castro, and this is the Lead Upside Down podcast, where leaders are sharing how they are leading in non-traditional ways based on Jesus's leadership style. If you have any questions, go back to the trailer episode and that should answer them. But right now, grab your favorite beverage and settle in. If you have any questions or comments, especially if something resonates with you, feel free to go to my website, begin2shift.com, and set up a coffee and conversation meeting, and we can chat about it in more detail. All right, enjoy. Well, today's Lead Upside Down podcast guest is Dale Young. And Dale and I got connected through a couple of other Kingdom entrepreneurs a little while back. And then we both ended up connecting, so to speak. I know you've known Mike Henry for a long time, but you ended up helping Mike with his ministry. I ended up helping Mike with his ministry. So we're all kind of in this bubble of different connections, all of us. And that's the way it is with the Kingdom. We're all just kind of passionately going forward with Jesus, and there's so many intersection and there's no competition, which I love about the Kingdom. But let me officially introduce you to Dale. He is a clarifier for Christian entrepreneurs and owners. He focuses their gifts in such a way that their businesses become a purpose-driven mission by combining the current science on growth with proven biblical principles. And Dale's been in business a while, and he does a great job. He's got a lot of really cool workshops and programs. So if you're looking for your business to grow, check with Dale. But today we're going to be talking about leading upside down. And so, Dale, I want to know, based on your experience and how you've been doing things in your world, what does lead upside down mean to you, and how has it affected your life and work?
So lead upside down to me is kind of another phrase for the inverted pyramid. You know, corporate America talks a lot about the top-down structure, and the whole generals call the plans, and then colonels tell all the armies to do it and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, to really serve and to really be a servant leader, it changes that pyramid upside down. And so if you're going to lead upside down, you have to be a servant.
And there are lots of examples, of course, in the Bible of that. Jesus, of course, really went out of his way. The essence of his leadership was always from a place of humility. And just that one scene where he was washing the disciples' feet, you know, that, of course, is the epitome, in that culture, the epitome of servant leadership.
Absolutely.
And so, before we go to the deeper dive segment, tell me a little bit, Dale, and tell the audience, if somebody's trying to lead upside down, either in a new way or in a different way, what advice would you give them?
Oh, gosh, what advice? Well, first of all, be a servant, because you're not going to lead if you're not the servant to start with. So be the servant. Really connect with the people that you're trying to serve and understand what their needs are. Doesn't do any good to take ice cubes to Eskimos because they've already got plenty of ice, right? So what do Eskimos need? And I have no idea, but, you know, find out what they need first and then help try and supply it. So find out what your audience needs and serve in that way.
One thing before we transition, because I do have one more question for you. I know that you lead upside down pretty much every day, and you've got like a great story of how you transitioned into your business. And one of those is because you were leading upside down and really thinking in a kingdom capacity. If you could just provide just a snippet of that story, and we'll do the deep dive when we talk a little bit more.
There's actually two different pieces to that story. One was in 1992 when was making crazy money. I was in Australia, and they had just started taxing some of that crazy money we were making, and everybody was griping about it. Now the words out of my mouth came, these words: we really shouldn't complain. This is just a job, not a career. And it was in that moment that my heart knew that it wanted something different and something bigger. That started me on what ended up being a 30-year journey. And that 30-year journey has taken me through several other iterations. So I'll just put it that way for the short version here, and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to kind of get that into the beginning segment so that we could kind of pick that apart a little bit. So let's go ahead and we're going to transition over to the deeper discussion. All right, Dale. So you have shared a little bit about that story. That 30 years, I know, was an opportunity for you to be pruned by Jesus. It was an opportunity for you to really step out in faith a lot of ways and to make some, what the world would say, illogical decisions. And so if you'll just do a reflection back and maybe share with the audience just some things that happened, how you ended up making these decisions, why you felt like you needed to walk in that direction, and some of the outcomes, and any part of that story that you want.
Well, it started in 92. So it was at that moment in 92, because up until that moment, I had basically been on this pathway of just grow in corporate America, just plug in, do whatever you needed to do to move in leadership. I'd become a manager, was being groomed to be more of a leader, all that sort of stuff. And it was like, I'm going in the wrong direction. It's like I've been building this career and my ladder is leaning on the wrong wall type of thing. And what was really interesting at the time, I wasn't even really a follower at that point. I was probably a believer, but I wasn't really a follower of Jesus. Okay. So I decided basically at that moment, over time, I confirmed it, but I decided to leave Australia, come back to the States. 6 months after that, I was in another job. I was working in, still in kind of corporate America, but with a really small company rather than a big one. And a couple of years after that, I get recruited into computer consulting. And a couple of years after that, I actually had an encounter at a funeral with Jesus and turned my life over to him. So I would not have been in all these places if I hadn't made all these other changes, right? Just started growing in the Lord and serving and whatever. Did a lot of activities with the church and other things like that. And about that same time, I'm part of a startup company. And there was 10 of us that started this company. We started with basically no revenue. Went to, I don't know, I think it was several tens of millions of dollars of revenue at the end of the year. And it was because we had started with a group of people that had basically a pipeline that we could use. And so we actually hit number 10 on the Entrepreneur Fast 100 growing companies. We hit number 10 for that year, hit number 23 2 years later. And then 2 years after that, we had to shut it down because we were about to go bankrupt. So, I mean, you talk about a roller coaster ride in corporate America.
Well, before you continue, let's backtrack, because I want you to dig a little bit deeper into the whole before you were a follower thing.
Okay.
This is what I love about Jesus. Jesus never looks at us as we are. He always looks at us as to who we will become in his fullness. And Jesus had been pursuing you, and you probably didn't realize it,
Oh,
because you said,
looking back, I can see the fingerprints all over the place, but at the time I didn't recognize it. No.
and for you to make that decision to just kind of come back and restart your life when all of this money you were generating, I mean, that in itself is leading upside down, even without Jesus, okay? Because that is not normal. Why, before you really connected with Jesus, why did you do that?
I don't know if I can put into words exactly why. I just knew it was the right thing for me. It was something It was something that my heart wanted, that my brain said, okay, well, if you're that set on it, I'm going to have to come up with the reasons to make it make sense, kind of. And that's really what happened. It was like I wanted something that was just, it wasn't available in the environment where I was. And I knew I had to change.
And
So
that is entrepreneurial in itself.
it is. And, thinking back about it, my dad was an entrepreneur. Matter of fact, he probably could not have held a job more than about a year at a time through his whole career. He was working for himself. He built the house that I grew up in, all this sort of stuff. He was an incredible mechanic with an 8th grade education, all these types of things. And so I probably picked up a lot of entrepreneur style from him. Okay. But that's all hindsight, because once I got into college, I was not going to be anything like dad, right? I was going to get a job and hold it down and all this sort of stuff. And all that changed, I mean, it eventually changed. It was like I was trying to put myself in a box that just didn't work.
And a lot of leaders, I believe, get stuck in these places where they're trying to grab their security everywhere but Jesus. And when they're trying to do that, the world, in a sense, gets to decide what their next step is. Whereas if your identity is secure as Jesus and you are trusting in Jesus, you get to make decisions in freedom as long as you're checking with Jesus, for the guidance and the direction. You
Mhm.
get to walk securely forward and trust that he's going to work things out.
Yeah.
So let's go back and pick up the story from where you left off and tell us a little bit more about it.
So at that same time that that startup company was doing so great in 2000 and 2002, and then falling on its face in 2004, I had actually been part of this church in 98 where I got baptized, and we'd gone through several different pastors. And so I was on the pastor search committee. We called a new pastor. We had great hopes. We renamed the church. And about 8 months later, the guy that we'd called gave up and went back to California. Okay. And we were faced with a choice of, do we keep trying? Do we look for another one? This has been a whole series over years before I ever got to that church. And so we actually ended up shutting the church down. So I shut the church down in 2003. I shut the company down in 2004. I'm kind of in this in-between state, this lost state. Fortunately, I did move over to a different consulting career, computer consulting career thing. I wasn't out of work or anything, but it was just kind of, I don't know where things are anymore, right? It's this sense of lostness. And I start volunteering for an organization called Pathways, really growing in emotional intelligence, really growing in relationships, really putting on a little bit of more leadership type capabilities, but still, like you say, from the upside down perspective, as more of a servant leader type of thing. And so then I find out through that organization, I found out about life coaching. And this is 2007. Okay. Remember, I got baptized in 98. 2007, I hear about life coaching. I'm looking into it real seriously. I say, this is really something I'm drawn to, but everything I could find on the internet or everything I could see about it, it was all secular. And it was like, this is not the direction I need to be going. And so I put it on the shelf. And then in 2009, I'm walking through Half Price Books, and this book falls off the shelf and clunks me on the head. And the book is titled Christian Coaching by Gary Collins. So it's like, okay, Lord, this is what you've been trying to show me. I finally get it, type of thing. And so that in 2011, that led me to a Professional Christian Coaching Institute, started taking training classes with them. Mid 2011, I get my first paying client, and I've had a coaching client ever since then, one way or the other type of thing, all the way through. But it was just in that period of exploring coaching that I found, oh, this really is this is where God has been calling me. This is where he's been leading me. And so I started doing that. And of course, a coach, as you know, the coach doesn't advise or tell people what to do. The coach has to get with people and help them understand from inside themselves what they want to do and help them figure out their path. It's not about us putting our agenda on them, but about us helping the people figure out what agenda they need to be putting out. And so that's all about leading upside down as well there. So anyway, about that time, 2012, I'm really getting excited about this. I go to work. I say, hey, if there's any time that I can maybe switch to part-time somehow. I'm a director at this point in the company, so it's not going to work very easily. But I say, if it works out, I'd like to maybe go to part-time, and go from there. So that's 2012. And about the same time, my marriage starts going downhill. And so from all of that, it's like wham, wham type of thing. So over 4 years of the marriage going downhill, finally, I admit in 2015 that it's really irrevocable. It's irreconcilable. It's just not going to come back together. So that finally starts the divorce proceedings, and we get it legalized March 7th of 2016. And about 2 weeks later, my boss from work comes to me and says, Dale, you've been talking about going to part-time for all these years. We think April 1st is a great time for you to do that. And I'm going, this is not how I planned it. Okay, God, if you're going to open the door now, I guess I need to step through it. I can't hardly be knocking at the door for all these years and then say, oh, you opened it, but I didn't step through. So I had to follow through and step through the door, even though that meant all the money started really going downhill after that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I went to part-time in IT at that point and finally got out of IT totally in 2021. So there we go. And really haven't looked back. I feel like I went to a full-time coach at that point, and I was just having a part-time job on the side type of thing. So anyway, so the coaching had, I kind of wandered in the wilderness, so to speak, for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, lost a lot of money, lost a lot of time. But really in 2019, started getting into the Strength Finder and started focusing in that. That's really a servant type thing, because I feel like when I'm bringing the strengths to the people and helping them understand their strengths, I'm helping them put together the pieces of who they are at a core level. And I'm always doing it from a Christian perspective anyway. Okay, most of my clients turn out to be Christians. Amazing that, God just kind of arranges it. But anyway, it really helps them solidify their identity, their who am I in Christ, and seeing how God wired them with the Strength Finder just helps them solidify that. And so that's really been the stuff up until about a last year or so, something like that. So I don't
Well,
know how much you want to go into
no, let
last
me go
year.
back and pick up a couple of things that you said. You prayed for clarity on what your purpose is, what God wanted you to do, and you went through a long season until the book fell on your head. Like, not everything is that dramatic. That doesn't happen to all of us. But I really believe that if we believe who Jesus is and that he listens to us and he hears our prayers, that he's going to answer them. And so we have to position ourselves to be in the right place, the right time for us to get the answer. And that's an active relationship with Jesus, not passive. And money, again, is one of those things that some people idolize, and I don't think they mean to, but whenever you're making money decisions above God decisions, you're idolizing money. And if you don't put God first, you're going to miss out on your blessings. And there were a lot of key stages in that story where you let upside down by listening to Jesus and doing what he told you along the way, instead of grabbing security wherever you could find it. Correct?
Absolutely. There was a lot of tough things through that. It was, um, gosh, some things I just don't want to go into publicly and things like that. But yeah, I mean, who wants to go from a full-time IT career making, six figures annually to part-time, who knows exactly what that's going to bring in from the IT side, and not really having any type of pipeline or whatever, maybe a few $100s a month type of thing on the coaching side, at least to start with. It's like, who makes those kinds of decisions? Well, if God's calling you and you really think that's what he's calling you to, you do make those decisions, and then you figure it out after that.
Mm-hmm.
One of my mentors, Christopher McCluskey, he says, if you feel like God has set this plan on you, then you have plan 1A. And if that doesn't work, you maybe come up with plan 1B. But you don't go to plan 2. You don't change the whole direction. you keep working plan 1, and you may get up to Z or AA or something like that. But you keep working plan 1 until God tells you not to. And so that's one of the one of the principles I followed. Felt like this was the right direction. God confirmed the direction multiple times in multiple ways, other than money. And it was just like, gotta do it. So of course met Mike Henry. I actually worked with Mike Henry in the computer career back in 2014, and then got connected with him when he started Follower One in 2017. I guess it was probably 2018 that I got connected with him. I think I've been on all the mission trips except 5. So something like that. So yeah.
I want to go back to what you were talking about when you work with clients. And I know we only have a couple of minutes left because you have to head out to a meeting. You as a coach and me as a coach, our really primary purpose, like you said, is to create the environment for the person that we're working with to excel, succeed, slash brainstorm, slash grow into whatever it is that you're trying to move towards. And I really love the way you do that through the different tools. Strength Finder is one of them, and you basically had the opportunity to do Strength Finders for all of us to kind of dig in a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit, just from your work as a coach, how knowing more about who you are, your strengths, your gifts, and just having that confidence in that sets the stage for Jesus to open up and help you thrive in your business, life, or career.
Yeah. Well, one of them, I mean, one of the things that I'll go back to, one of my earliest StrengthsFinder clients, and I think you know her, Sam Morrison. She had self-published 16 books when I met her. Okay, she was owner publisher of a neighborhood magazine, and yet she was drained, she was worn out, and all that. So I took her through the StrengthsFinder process. Matter of fact, the first thing that she did when she took the test, even before we'd started the coaching, is she calls me up and she says, "Dale, your test is broken." And I'm going, "Tell me about this, Sam, what's going on?" And she says, "Well, this is communications number 14. I've self-published 16 books and all this sort of stuff." And I say, "Trust the process, Sam." That's kind of shorthand code because we both had heard that in Pathways a lot. But I told her, trust the process. And when we got down to 14 and was going through communication, she said, "Oh, I see why this wasn't up higher. This is not me." And so anyway, so she had actually shut down that company, did not know what she was going to do next. So we were doing that in February and March of 2019. And she started her company April 1st of 2019. And she started a virtual administration company. And now, 4 years later, whatever it is, 4 years later, she is going to do over 100K this year. She's got 17 people working with her, all part-time, all contract employees. She's got like close to 40 clients nationwide that she works with. And she is just living the dream. Matter of fact, she is actually trying to figure out how to get them to take over more of her work so she can go do her volunteer work even more. So, I mean, that's the best one. But I've seen similar type things with other people, just not as dramatic, where they have said, okay, this is my direction, this is my purpose, this is my calling. I need to focus on this. And that has just turned things around for people on a personal, professional, and spiritual level.
And in tandem, you really, by leading upside down yourself and making decisions the way you made them, you created the environment for Sam to do the same. And so it's almost like multiplication, because I mean, how many stories and parables where there was multiplication involved? Like, 5 loaves and 2 fish, like they multiplied, and just so much multiplication in the kingdom organically when you follow Jesus and you do what he says. But you have to be listening, which is like the first rule of leading upside down. You have to be listening.
Have to be listening to Jesus. You have to be listening to the people you're trying to serve. You have to be listening to your own heart. That was the piece that I was missing when I started the journey.
Yep. And the people that you purposely put around you, the truth tellers, that will keep you in the right lane if you tend to stray out for any reason. So, well, let's go ahead and wrap up. What final something would you like to say to everybody about leading upside down before we go?
Well, the thing is, with leading upside down, you really have to focus on doing it the way you were meant to do it. Okay. You can't do it you can't lead upside down in a way that's not going to be natural to you. Okay. You have to do it through your own talent, strengths, identity, all that sort of stuff. Strength Finder is a great way to do that. I'm working on a program right now called Step Into Your Calling. And I feel like the 30-year journey has led me to the point where I know enough to be able to teach a little bit of it to the next people. And so that Step Into Your Calling is my next program that I'm going to be taking out to the world. And I think a lot of that comes into, what is your calling? How do you lead upside down while still moving forward and while still honoring God, honoring yourself, and honoring others around you? Or if you prefer, loving God, loving yourself, and loving others around you.
There you go. Well, thank you again for being a guest. I will include all of your contact information in the show notes or wherever you end up watching this. And once again, if there's anything that you heard that you want to deep dive a little bit about with me, feel free to go to my website and sign up for a coffee and conversation. Otherwise, if you're interested in what Dale talked about, get a hold of Dale, because there is no competition in the kingdom.
There's plenty of abundance in the kingdom.
All right, everybody. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for hanging out and enjoying the Lead Upside Down podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember, wherever you are, you can lead upside down too, just like Jesus did. Feel free to reach out to me if you want more information or if you think I can serve you in some way. Just go to my website, begin2shift.com, and click on the coffee and conversation icon and set that meeting up. Have a fantastic rest of your day.